Princess Diana wasn't just watched by British intelligence. The FBI was tracking her movements across American soil, and the files prove it. In 2023, the FBI released a heavily redacted 123-page file labeled 62HQ11-487, documenting surveillance of Diana during her visits to the United States between 1990 and 1997. But entire pages are blacked out under national security exemptions, and investigators who reviewed the file discovered references to a 1995 emergency briefing about an organized attempt involving Diana that triggered coordination between FBI, MI5, and CIA, a briefing whose contents remain classified today. This video reveals what the FBI was monitoring during Diana's trips to New York and Los Angeles, why anonymous letters about Diana triggered threat assessments normally reserved for terrorism cases, which foreign intelligence agencies were sharing information about her movements, what incident in 1995 made the FBI classify Diana as a potential security risk, and why 26 years after her death, the Bureau still refuses to release complete files about a British princess who had no official role in American government. The FBI analyst's finger traced the black bar covering page 47. Smooth, slightly raised, laser-printed redaction, permanent, fluorescent lights hummed overhead in the records room. Cold air recycled through ceiling vents. No windows, just beige walls and the smell of aging paper. She flipped the page. More black bars. Entire paragraphs erased like they'd never existed. Only the header remained. Diana, Princess of Wales. Threat assessment. File 62HQ11-4087. Classified. Her supervisor had told her, process this for public release. Redact anything that compromises sources or methods. Standard declassification protocol. But this wasn't standard. She'd processed thousands of FOIA releases, knew what normal redactions looked like, single names, specific locations, source identifiers. This was different. Whole sections gone, not protecting sources, protecting something else entirely. At the bottom of page 52, one sentence fragment remained visible between black bars. Subject's presence in United States constitutes potential redacted and requires coordination with redacted per established protocol for foreign redacted. The analyst touched the page edge, paper slightly warmer than the room's conditioned air. She turned it slowly, as if the next page might explain what the black bars were hiding. It didn't. More redactions, more silence pressed into paper. She closed file 62HQ11-4087, made a note in her processing log, careful to keep her language neutral. Extensive redactions, classification rationale unclear. What she didn't write. Someone decided the American public couldn't know why a divorced British princess triggered 7 years of FBI surveillance. Why her name appeared in emergency briefings marked eyes only. Why coordination protocols existed for monitoring her charity work. The file went into the release stack. 123 pages, half of them black. The truth underneath those bars would stay there, locked in whatever basement vault held the unredacted master copy, waiting. In January 2023, the FBI quietly uploaded documents to its public records database. No press release, no announcement, just files appearing in response to Freedom of Information Act requests filed years earlier by researchers who'd mostly forgotten they'd asked. Among the documents, File 62HQ11-4087, Princess Diana, 1997, 123 pages, heavily redacted. The file's existence surprised even longtime Diana investigators. The FBI doesn't routinely surveil foreign royalty visiting for charity events, doesn't maintain multi-year intelligence operations on people with no criminal record, no security clearance, no official government role. But they'd watched Diana, documented her movements across American cities, filed reports that climbed classification ladders until they required national security exemptions to stay hidden. The question nobody in the released file answered. Why? The file opens with a threat assessment dated March 12, 1991. Someone had sent a letter to the FBI's New York field office, anonymous, typed, no return address. The letter warned that Diana would be targeted during an upcoming visit to New York City. Organized elements were planning to use her for unspecified purposes during a charity gala at the Waldorf Astoria. Standard FBI procedure for anonymous threats, preliminary assessment, credibility check. Most get dismissed within hours. This one triggered a formal investigation, case file opened, agents assigned, surveillance authorized. The explanation for why is completely redacted. The section titled Threat Credibility Analyses is 3 pages of solid black bars. Whatever made this letter different, whatever elevated it from routine crankmail to classified intelligence operation, remains hidden behind those bars. Between 1991 and 1997, Diana visited the United States 17 times according to public records. The FBI file documents at least 12 of those visits, possibly more. Some entries reference previous surveillance reports that aren't included in the released pages. New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Miami, San Francisco, charity galas, hospital visits, AIDS fundraising, landmine campaign events, private dinners with American philanthropists and celebrities. Each visit generated FBI reports, agents monitoring her movements, recording who she met, where she went, how long she stayed. One entry from August 1993, heavily redacted. Subject departed Beverly Wilshire Hotel 14:22 hours. Proceeded via motorcade to redacted where she met privately with redacted for approximately 90 minutes. Conversation topics included redacted. Subject returned to hotel 17:45 hours accompanied by redacted. No security incidents observed. The precision is notable. Down to the minute. That level of detail requires either physical surveillance agents watching in real time or coordination with Diana's British security detail feeding information directly to American intelligence. Either way, it confirms Diana wasn't casually monitored. She was actively tracked. Every movement documented. Every meeting recorded. The names are gone. The locations are gone. But the surveillance infrastructure remains visible in the timestamps and the careful notation of her daily schedule. Someone was watching Diana closely enough to know when she left her hotel, where she went, who she met, what time she returned, and filing classified reports about it. The file contains references to multiple threat letters spanning 6 years, not one anonymous warning, multiple threats from multiple sources assessed at multiple threat levels. Some came from individuals with histories of obsessive letter writing to celebrities. The FBI assessed those quickly. Mentally ill individuals, no credible capability, no action required beyond filing. Others were taken more seriously. Page 68, mostly redacted, contains a section header, Threat Analyses, Extremist Coordination. Below it, fragments between black bars. Bureau has received information suggesting redacted extremist elements may attempt coordination with redacted intelligence service, indicates pattern of redacted consistent with organized redacted. The language choices are specific. FBI threat assessments use precise terminology. Extremist elements means ideological groups. Pattern means multiple incidents. Organized means planning and coordination. This wasn't one disturbed individual. According to the FBI's own language, there was structure, multiple actors, evidence of planning, and it involved a foreign intelligence service sharing information with the FBI about threats to Diana on American soil. Almost certainly British MI5 or MI6, but possibly others. The names are redacted. The specific threat is redacted. The nature of the organized attempt is redacted. What remains visible? The FBI believed Diana faced credible danger from organized groups during her U.S. visits. Danger serious enough to warrant classified coordination with foreign intelligence services. One section describes an incident at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, May 1994. Diana attended a high-profile gala, black tie event, media coverage, several hundred guests. According to the FBI report heavily redacted, security personnel identified individual attempting to redacted subject during cocktail reception. Individual was redacted by venue security and subsequently redacted by venue security and subsequently redacted by venue security and subsequently redacted by GMYPD. Subject was not made aware of incident per said security protocol. Individual's identity redacted. Motivation assessed as redacted. Something happened. Someone tried to do something to Diana. Security stopped them. Police were involved. Diana never knew. The decision to keep it from her suggests either the incident wasn't serious enough to cause alarm, or was serious enough that telling her would reveal how closely she was being watched, and by whom. Years later, Diana's former bodyguard Ken Worf told journalists, "She received threats we never disclosed. We made calculated decisions about what Diana needed to know. Some threats were serious but manageable without causing her panic." This Met Gala incident may have been one of those managed silences, a threat neutralized quietly, while Diana smiled for cameras, unaware someone in the room had just been removed for trying to approach her with unknown intent. The nature of the attempt is blacked out. The individual's identity is blacked out. Their motivation is blacked out. All that remains proof something happened that the FBI documented and classified. Another entry references mail intercept operations. One line visible. Pursuant to established protocols, Bureau maintains intercept on correspondence addressed to subject at redacted hotel during U.S. visits. The FBI was intercepting Diana's mail. Letters sent to her at hotels where she stayed during American visits were being screened, possibly opened and read before reaching her. Standard practice for foreign officials under protection. Perhaps, but Diana wasn't a foreign official. She was a private citizen, a divorced princess with no government role.
role. Mail intercept requires legal authorization, court orders or national security letters. Someone had to justify why Diana's personal correspondence warranted federal intervention. That justification is completely redacted. What authority authorized reading a British citizen's private mail while she stayed at American hotels? Under what legal theory? Based on what threat assessment? The file doesn't say, just confirms it happened. Letters addressed to Diana were intercepted, screened and in some cases retained for analysis, whatever that means. Her privacy violated as routine surveillance practice by a foreign government while she visited for charity work. And that detail, buried on page 73, explains why someone wanted this file to stay classified, because it documents systematic violation of a celebrity's privacy. Based on threat assessments the FBI still won't explain.
1995 report from Los Angeles reads like a minute-by-minute surveillance log. Subject departed Four Seasons Hotel 09:15 hours via hotel vehicle. Traveled north on Dohoney Drive to Redacted. Arrived 09:47 hours. Met with Redacted in private conference room. Meeting lasted 127 minutes. Subject departed location 12:14 hours. Returned to hotel 12:58 hours. No contact with additional parties observed during return journey. Someone was tracking Diana with precision that required either physical surveillance, FBI agents following her motorcade, or real-time coordination with her British security detail. The report notes travel times down to the minute, exact routes, meeting durations, whether she spoke to anyone during travel. That's not protective monitoring. That's intelligence gathering. Active surveillance generating classified reports filed at FBI headquarters. But monitoring what? What was the FBI looking for in Diana's charity meetings and hospital visits? The file contains repeated references to associations of concern. FBI terminology meaning people the subject is meeting with that intelligence agencies consider problematic. Page 89, mostly black bars, contains fragments. Subject maintains regular contact with Redacted, a known Redacted with suspected ties to Redacted organizations. Bureau recommends continued monitoring of this association and Redacted. Who was Diana meeting that worried the FBI enough to recommend ongoing intelligence collection? Possibilities based on Diana's documented activities. Wealthy Middle Eastern businessmen who donated millions to her charities. People possibly on intelligence watch lists for other reasons. American celebrities with activism histories in regions where U.S. conducted operations. People whose politics made them subjects of interest. International philanthropists with connections in countries under surveillance. People whose networks crossed intelligence red lines. Medical researchers working in regions with geopolitical sensitivity. People whose work touched classified zones. All speculation. The names are completely gone. Redacted under national security exemptions that protect the identities for reasons never explained. But whoever they were, their association with Diana was significant enough that the FBI wanted continuous intelligence on those relationships. Wanted to know when Diana met them, what they discussed, how often contact occurred. Diana's friendships became intelligence targets because she befriended the wrong people. People who, for reasons locked behind black bars, made American intelligence agencies nervous. One section, heavily redacted, references foreign intelligence sharing protocols. Visible text, per coordination agreement. Information regarding subjects' U.S. activities has been shared with Redacted Security Service under Redacted Intelligence Sharing Framework. Reciprocal intelligence indicates Redacted maintains active monitoring of subjects' international travel and communications per Redacted. Translation. The FBI was feeding information about Diana to at least one foreign intelligence agency, and receiving information back. The most likely candidates, British MI5 domestic surveillance and MI6 foreign operations. Diana's own government spying on her abroad and sharing intelligence with allies. But the redacted name could be others. French intelligence monitoring her relationship with Dodi Fayed. Israeli intelligence tracking her Middle Eastern connections. Any service with strategic interest in Diana's activities and associations. What's undeniable? Diana wasn't being watched by one country's spies. She was the subject of international intelligence coordination. Her movements, meetings, and communications were being shared among multiple governments' surveillance apparatus. A woman with no political office, no security clearance, no official role beyond divorced mother and charity advocate. Yet intelligence agencies treated her like a person of interest in ongoing national security operations. The file documents this coordination without explaining why it was necessary. Without justifying why Diana warranted the same intelligence sharing protocols typically reserved for terrorism suspects, foreign agents, and persons of significant geopolitical concern. She was just a princess doing charity work, meeting donors, visiting hospitals, raising awareness about AIDS and landmines, and being watched like a national security threat by intelligence agencies across multiple countries who shared information about her every move. Page 78 marks where everything changed. The header reads, Emergency Briefing, October 18, 1995, File 62 HQ 1444087, Eyes Only. What follows is almost entirely black bars. Only fragments survive between the redactions. Bureau has received intelligence indicating potential organized attempt involving subject. Requires immediate coordination with redacted and redacted intelligence services. Threat level elevated to redacted effective immediately. Recommend subject postpone all planned U.S. travel until threat assessment complete. Investigation ongoing per redacted protocols. October 1995. Just 1 month before Diana's Panorama interview with Martin Bashir, where she spoke publicly about feeling isolated, watched, and fearful for her safety. Something happened that October. Something serious enough to trigger an emergency classified briefing. Serious enough to elevate Diana from surveillance subject to elevated threat level. Serious enough to recommend she avoid American soil entirely. What was the organized attempt? Who was organizing it? What were they attempting to do to or with Diana? Timeline context matters. Diana had divorced Charles in August 9. She was living independently for the first time in 15 years, making her own decisions about travel, work, and public statements without palace oversight. She was also becoming more outspoken, planning the Panorama interview, preparing to speak publicly about things the royal family wanted kept private. In September 1995, 1 month before this emergency briefing, Diana met with Martin Bashir and agreed to do the interview. She'd seen forged bank statements suggesting her staff were spying on her, felt increasingly paranoid about surveillance and betrayal. Then in October 1995, the FBI issued an emergency classified briefing about an organized attempt involving Diana that required immediate intelligence coordination and elevated threat assessment. 1 month later, November 20, 1995, the Panorama interview aired. Diana spoke about feeling like a threat to the establishment, about being watched, about forces wanting her silenced. Was the October emergency briefing about a genuine threat to Diana's safety, or had intelligence agencies learned Diana was planning to speak publicly about surveillance she'd become aware of? Did the organized attempt refer to a plot against Diana, or Diana's attempt to organize public statements about being monitored? The file doesn't clarify, just documents that something in October 1995 changed how the FBI viewed Diana, elevated her from monitored subject to crisis requiring emergency protocols. A follow-up entry dated November 20, 1995, 2 days after the Panorama interview aired, reads, Subject's recent public statements have redacted security assessment. Bureau recommends redacted enhanced surveillance protocols for any future U.S. travel. Coordination with redacted ongoing. Diana's interview, where she spoke openly about her fears, her isolation, and feeling like an outsider threatening the institution, changed her security classification. She'd gone from monitored visitor to something else, something requiring enhanced surveillance protocols. By speaking publicly about feeling watched and threatened, Diana confirmed to intelligence agencies that she was aware of surveillance and potentially willing to expose it. That made her not just a subject of interest, but something more problematic, someone who knew she was being monitored and might reveal that monitoring publicly. The file shows that intelligence agencies responded to Diana's public statements by increasing surveillance, not decreasing it, not backing off to avoid exposure, doubling down, watching her more closely, because she'd become dangerous not to her own safety but to the secrecy of the operations monitoring her. The FBI file repeatedly references liaison operations and intelligence sharing frameworks. Standard practice when foreign nationals visit the U.S. involves minimal coordination, basic security notifications, courtesy briefings with host nation security services. Diana's file shows something far beyond standard diplomatic courtesy. Multiple entries describe ongoing liaison with redacted regarding subjects' activities, associations, and communications. Real-time intelligence sharing during subjects' U.S. visits per redacted protocols. Joint assessment procedures for evaluating threat information and subjects' security posture. This level of coordination suggests a formalized intelligence sharing arrangement, not casual updates between friendly services. A structured system for tracking Diana's movements and relationships across international borders with operational precision. One partially visible section states, Redacted Security Service has provided intelligence indicating subject may be targeted by individuals with connections to Redacted. This information has been assessed as credible and actionable per Redacted evaluation criteria. Bureau will maintain enhanced surveillance during subject's next scheduled U.S. visit. Recommend Redacted. Translation. A foreign intelligence agency, most likely British, told the FBI that Diana was in potential danger from people connected to something they won't specify, and the FBI treated it as credible and actionable, believed the threat was real, justified enhanced surveillance, which raises the obvious question, if the threat was credible, why was the FBI's response to watch Diana more closely rather than investigate whoever posed the danger? Why not warn her? Why not arrest or surveil the threatening parties? Why not provide active protection? The FBI's answer appears to be, just monitor. Document,
Report, let events unfold while maintaining intelligence collection, as if the goal wasn't protecting Diana but observing her to see what would happen next, who would approach her, what she would do, how the situation would develop. Surveillance as intelligence operation, not protection detail. The file contains brief references to CIA involvement. One entry, information regarding subjects' associations with redacted, forwarded to redacted for assessment and potential action per existing protocol for redacted foreign nationals with connections to redacted regions. CIA involvement makes sense only if Diana's activities touched on foreign intelligence concerns, people in countries the CIA monitored, individuals on CIA watch lists, connections to regions where American intelligence conducted active operations. Diana's charity work took her to Angola, landmines, Pakistan, hospitals, Bosnia, refugee support, all regions where U.S. intelligence maintained operations during the 1990s. She met with politicians, activists, and business people from Middle Eastern countries, from war zones, from regions with active intelligence collection priorities. Was the CIA tracking Diana because of where she traveled and who she knew in those sensitive regions? Or was something else happening? Were her associations creating intelligence opportunities or intelligence problems? The file suggests both. Diana's connections provided intelligence value, information about who she knew and what they discussed, but also created security concerns, people using Diana's trust to access information or influence her actions. Either way, the CIA was in the loop, receiving FBI reports, possibly conducting their own assessment operations. Diana thought she was doing charity work. Intelligence agencies saw operational opportunities and security risks that required ongoing classified monitoring, and never told her she'd become a subject of interest to the American intelligence community for reasons they'd never fully explain.
The most frustrating aspect of File 62 HQ114087. Names. Dozens of names appear in the 1234 tinge. Every single one is redacted. Subject met with redacted at redacted restaurant in redacted for approximately redacted minutes. Bureau has opened preliminary assessment on redacted, an associate of subject with suspected connections to redacted and redacted. Redacted Intelligence Service reports subject maintaining regular contact with redacted, a redacted national with ties to redacted. Who were these people? Why are their names still classified 26 years after Diana's death? The FBI's explanation in the file release. Names redacted pursuant to B1 National Security Exemption and B7E Law Enforcement Techniques and Procedures. Translation. Revealing these names would harm national security or expose intelligence methods still in use. But whose national security? Diana is dead. Most people she associated with in the 1990s are elderly or deceased. The Soviet Union is gone. The geopolitical landscape has shifted entirely. What harm could possibly come from revealing names today? Unless the names themselves are the secret. Unless revealing who Diana met with would expose intelligence operations, surveillance targets, or associations that remain sensitive for reasons that have nothing to do with Diana, and everything to do with ongoing intelligence priorities. One heavily redacted section references someone Diana met multiple times during U.S. visits over several years. Subject's relationship with redacted continues to be of significant interest. Redacted maintains documented connections to redacted and redacted. Bureau assessment concludes redacted may be utilizing relationship with subject to redacted for purposes of redacted. Recommend continued monitoring in redacted. This reads like the FBI believes someone in Diana's social circle was using their relationship with her for something. Intelligence gathering, business advantage, political leverage, access to information or people. Diana was famously trusting, believed in people, wanted to help, gave people second chances, opened doors for individuals who approached her with compelling stories or charitable missions. Was someone exploiting that? Using access to Diana to achieve goals the FBI considered problematic enough to warrant classified surveillance and assessment? If so, who, for what purpose, and was Diana aware she was being used? The answers remain locked behind black bars that may never be removed. Names of people Diana trusted, people she opened her life to, classified as national security information for reasons never explained and possibly never explainable without exposing intelligence operations that continue today. Diana's friendships became classified information. Her trust became an intelligence concern. Her generosity became a security problem. And 26 years after her death, the FBI still won't say who she was meeting or why those meetings mattered enough to document, classify, and hide from public view. File 62 HQ1 While our Quanthouse 8 doesn't end with Diana's death in August 1997. It continues. The final sections contain reports generated after the Paris crash, assessments produced in September and October 1997 while the world mourned and investigations into the crash began. One entry, dated September 5, 1997, 6 days after Diana died, states, In light of subject's death, Bureau has conducted comprehensive review of all intelligence gathered regarding subject's U.S. activities 1990-1997. Assessment concludes redacted. All active monitoring terminated effective September 4, 1997. File closed pending any future developments requiring reassessment. The FBI conducted a formal post-death assessment, reviewed 7 years of surveillance, evaluated what had been learned, drew conclusions. Those conclusions are completely redacted. The entire assessment, whatever it determined about 7 years of watching Diana, is hidden behind black bars. But the fact that a formal assessment was conducted at all raises questions. Standard FBI procedure doesn't include post-death intelligence reviews of foreign civilians who die abroad unless American interests are involved or operational questions need resolution. Why did the FBI need to assess whether their surveillance of Diana revealed anything requiring continued attention after she died? Unless there was reason to wonder if the surveillance and her death might be connected, or if intelligence gathered during monitoring needed evaluation for ongoing operational relevance. The file treats Diana's death as a closing event for surveillance operations, but also as a moment requiring formal assessment, suggesting the FBI wanted to document officially what the monitoring had achieved and whether anything learned required further action. Another entry references foreign intelligence requests. Redacted has formally requested access to Bureau's complete file on subject for purposes of redacted investigation. Request granted per established information sharing protocols. Complete file transmitted redacted. After Diana died, at least one foreign intelligence agency requested the FBI's full file on her. Not the redacted public version. The complete unredacted intelligence record. Who requested it? British intelligence reviewing what Americans had documented about Diana. French authorities investigating the crash and wanting to know what surveillance existed. Another intelligence service with interest in Diana's death and what American agencies knew. The requesting service is redacted. The purpose is redacted. But the request was granted, meaning whatever the FBI had documented about Diana for 7 years was shared in full with at least one other country's intelligence apparatus after she died. What were they looking for in those records? What did they want to know about what the FBI had learned during surveillance operations? And what did they do with that information once they received it? The file doesn't say. Just confirms that Diana's death triggered intelligence sharing between the FBI and foreign services, sharing that involved complete disclosure of surveillance records, not the sanitized redacted version eventually released to the public. One final entry dated October 15, 1997, contains a formal closure statement. Bureau's comprehensive assessment finds no evidence indicating subject's death in Paris related to activities or associations documented in this file. Threat assessment operations concluded with no outstanding concerns. Case file closed. No further investigative action required. The FBI formally stated Diana's death was unrelated to 7 years of surveillance. No connection between what they'd been monitoring and how she died. But why did they need to make that assessment at all? Standard FBI practice doesn't involve investigating deaths that occur outside U.S. jurisdiction unless American citizens or interests are involved, or unless there's reason to believe Bureau operations might be connected to the incident. Why did the FBI feel compelled to conduct a formal assessment determining whether their surveillance of Diana was related to her death in a Paris tunnel, unless there was operational reason to wonder if the monitoring, the intelligence sharing, the threat assessments, and the coordination with foreign services might have contributed to circumstances that led to the crash? The FBI declared no connection, but the fact they investigated the question at all suggests someone asked it. Someone wondered if 7 years of classified surveillance operations might have played a role, however indirect, in creating conditions where Diana's death became possible. The answer, according to the file, no connection found, but the question itself documented in a classified file assessing whether FBI operations were connected to a foreign civilian's death suggests intelligence agencies knew the surveillance could raise uncomfortable questions if anyone ever learned its full extent, so they assessed, concluded no connection, closed the file, and classified the assessment so no one could challenge the conclusion or examine the reasoning that led to it. Princess Diana died 26 years ago in a Paris tunnel. File 62 HQ 114087 was released in 2023, heavily redacted, incomplete, raising more questions than it answers, but even the fragments visible through black bars reveal a disturbing pattern. Why was a divorced British princess with no political office, no security clearance and no criminal record surveilled by American intelligence for 7 consecutive years? Why were her movements tracked with precision normally reserved for terrorism suspects and foreign agents? Why did the FBI coordinate with multiple foreign intelligence services to monitor her associations and communications? What happened in October 1995 that triggered an emergency classified briefing and elevated threat assessment? Who were the redacted names? Why are they still classified decades after Diana's death? And why did the FBI conduct a formal post-death assessment determining whether their surveillance operations were connected to her death in Paris? The standard explanation offered by intelligence agencies: Diana was a high-profile figure. Threats against her required security coordination. Her celebrity status warranted protective monitoring during U.S. visits, but that explanation collapses under scrutiny. The FBI doesn't maintain 7-year classified surveillance operations on celebrities visiting America, not controversial ones, not political ones, not even royal ones from allied nations. This was something else. Diana was being watched not because she was famous, but because someone in the intelligence community believed she posed a risk. A risk to what? To whom? For what reason? Those answers are buried under black bars on 123 pages that may not be fully released for decades, if ever. But the fragments visible suggest Diana became an intelligence target because of who she knew, where she traveled, and what she represented, a figure with global influence, personal wealth, and the willingness to challenge institutions that wanted her quiet. The FBI watched her because she was unpredictable, because she had access to powerful people in regions where U.S. intelligence operated, because her independence and global platform made her difficult to control, and because intelligence agencies, American, British, and others decided monitoring her was necessary for reasons they still won't explain and may never be willing to admit. Diana thought she was doing charity work, meeting donors, supporting causes. Intelligence agencies saw something else, something that required 7 years of classified surveillance, coordination with foreign services, threat assessments, emergency briefings, and post-death evaluations to determine if their operations contributed to her death. The file exists. Somewhere in an FBI vault, the complete unredacted version holds all the answers: who Diana met, why it mattered, what the threats were, what the October 1995 emergency involved, why the surveillance continued even after Diana became aware she was being watched, all of it documented, all of it classified, all of it locked away from public view for reasons that have nothing to do with protecting Diana and everything to do with protecting the intelligence operations that made her a target. Appleby FBI Headquarters, J. Edgar Hoover Building, Washington, D.C., basement level, records vault, climate-controlled, limited access, file 62 HQ 114087, sits in a classified storage unit. The complete version, unredacted, 23 pages, plus appendices, plus surveillance reports referenced in the released version but never included, plus assessment documents marked I as only that may never see public release. Somewhere in that complete file are the names, the specific threats, the details of the October 1995 emergency, the full post-death assessment, the intelligence shared with foreign services, the truth about why the FBI watched Princess Diana for 7 years and why they still won't tell us why. In 2023, the FBI released 195 cells, half are solid black bars. Page 47, threat assessment, classified, everything below erased. Page 78, emergency briefing, October 1995, almost entirely redacted. Page 103, names of everyone Diana met, all gone. 26 years after Diana died in a Paris tunnel, the FBI still classifies information about her U.S. visits as national security secrets, not because releasing it would harm Diana, because releasing it would expose who was watching, why they were watching, and what they learned that required 7 years of classified surveillance operations against a woman whose only crime was being impossible to control. The file exists, complete, unredacted, locked in a vault, file 62 HQ 14087, holding answers to questions Diana herself asked in her final years. Who's watching me? Why? And what are they going to do with what they learn? The redacted pages know, but we're not allowed to know, not yet, maybe not ever.